For example, if you advertise kindness as one of the values in your practice, you're more likely to attract Gen Zs that are quality. It's something that hardly anybody talks about. Pay attention to it because they're the things they're looking for. And the problem is that as the leaders in the organizations, as the doctors and practice managers, we'll roll our eyeballs because there's so much to do. And now we've got to hold your hand and make you feel special and blah, blah, blah. But we have to.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Orthopreneurs podcast. Today, we're joined by a very special guest. As you can tell from her accent, she is originally from Queens, New York. I kid.
Yeah, haha.
Yeah. Please welcome Amanda Gore. Welcome, Amanda.
Hey, Glenn. Thanks so much for having me on the program.
Yeah, not Queens, New York, Queensland.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to get rid of the New York accent, but it wasn't that easy.
Yeah. The only way you can get rid of the New York accent is you replaced it with an Aussie accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you can't shake that. For those of you who may not know who Amanda is, Amanda, if it's okay with you, I'm going to take 30 seconds to give a little quick Glenn Krieger and how he knows Amanda Gore story here, if it's all right.
Well, I'd be thrilled to hear that.
Yeah. Amanda Gore was at our second ever Orthopreneurs Summit in Dallas, Texas, and was amazing at what she did and loved her.
And I love you guys, by the way.
And everybody who meets Amanda Gore loves her. And during COVID, we actually did a humongous webinar. I think it was for my RD group and their family members. We did a huge webinar one night. And what was the title of that one?
Yeah.
I showed you my blue ribbon.
Oh, who you are makes a difference.
Who you are makes a difference. And it was amazing because, it sort of made everybody feel together, even though we were apart. And it was beautiful. And that's your gift. But if we go back even further, it's got to be 20 years, if it's a day, where I first sat in the audience at a Seattle Study Club event when you were speaking at Seattle Study Club, and you were a fun fairy that day.
Yeah, that's right. Things change.
Well, I'm sure you're still a fun fairy, but the best part was she walked around the stage with a wand in her hand. It made everybody say, "I'm a fun fairy. I'm a fun fairy."
You've got a
and it was on
great
that
memory.
What?
You got a great memory.
It was impactful, Amanda. It was impactful. It's not that I have a great memory. It's that you really touched me in a special way that day because you talked about so many great things that have become even more valuable today. The workforce, let's be honest, has become a lot more, shall we say, sensitive.
Entitled?
Yeah, entitled, sensitive than it was 20 years ago. And back then, you were the one who was teaching everybody in the room to, quote unquote, build a bridge and get over it.
Yeah.
Right? As your teenage daughter used to tell you, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
And then you shortened it from build a bridge and get over it to just a finger, right? And so people who aren't listening, who are watching and aren't listening are missing it. But she started like this, right? This was build a bridge and get over it. And then you said you can just stand there and go, and that's build a bridge.
So they didn't notice, but you felt better.
Oh, it was great. And because the point was, just build a bridge and get over it, folks. Don't get too upset. Don't hang on to it. Let it go. And I would love to get into a little bit of that with you today, if you don't mind, because I think you have such a unique perspective. And if I'm not mistaken, and now I could be wrong, I think we finished the entire presentation with everybody standing and dancing to Always Look on the Bright Side of Life by Monty Python. Am I crazy?
No, you are absolutely spot on, and I'm really impressed.
Well, like I said, it truly was impactful. For those of you out there, we'll talk about it at the end of the podcast episode, but for those of you out there who've never seen Amanda speak, or you've seen her speak and need it again, definitely get this woman to come speak to your dental society, your component meeting. If you want to do something special for all the referrers in your community, rent out a place for her to speak for the day, get her in town, and I guarantee you, the doctors and their teams, bring them all in. They will thank you for, I'm remembering a lecture from 20 years ago, people. They will thank you forever, guaranteed. And so with that, let's start here. Do you mind taking maybe a minute or two, Amanda, and just telling people about you? Who are you, and how did you end up where you are now?
Well, it could be a very boring story, Glenn.
Nah, nothing with you is boring.
I don't know, but I do feel so much better. My God, I think you've missed your calling. You should be some kind of motivational speaker, Glenn.
Now, I'm a co-leader of guests. That's all I'm a facilitator. I'm a positive-minded person who brings great people to another group of great people. And that's just like we're doing today. And
That
that makes
is
me happy.
why you're so successful.
Well,
That is
thank
such
you.
a great altruistic and impactful role.
Thank
Um,
you.
so I started off as a physical therapist, but in Australia, we're called physiotherapists, and we're different from physical therapists. We're a cross between respiratory therapists and nurses and chiropractors and natural, a whole pile of things. So we're trained in a lot of different areas. And then I went into ergonomics and occupational health, which then launched a career in speaking, originally on wellness. So that was like 38 years ago,
Wow.
when wellness was a new thing. People were saying, well, what? What's
Yeah.
that? And so I was ahead of my time, put it that way. And that just morphed into me speaking more and more about the issues that affected wellness, which was stress and burnout, and then the things that cause stress, which was communication and connection or disconnection, and poor communication. And I ended up writing a book on joy, and the book was it's a kind of a handbook for leading a good life, really, where you're not jumping out of your skin going, whoa, life's great all the time,
Right.
but it helps you navigate the ups and downs a little bit more evenly. And the skills that are in the book are the ones that are relevant today. We were just having a conversation before we started. And, if you look at the issues we're facing today, Glenn, they're honestly, it's just different versions of the same thing, because we're dealing with humans, and humans truly haven't changed that much for thousands of years. And we're all toddlers walking around in grown up bodies, and we all want to be seen and valued and heard and acknowledged and recognized. And the Gen Zs, knowing that we were the parents and the grandparents that brought those people up, we have created, some would call a monster, but some would call just a slightly more fragile group. But I don't know. Sometimes I think, well, perhaps they're much more tuned in than we are, because in my generation, you didn't feel. It wasn't that you just didn't feel. It wasn't until I was about 60 that I realized, oh, what, you feel things? What do you feel? What's that?
Right.
So
Keep
I,
it all inside.
yeah,
Like the old song from the 70s by Melissa Manchester, Don't Cry Out Loud.
yeah, exactly. No,
Just
don't.
keep it inside, learn how to
Mm,
hide your feelings. That was that
exactly.
generation. Exactly.
And so now they're not putting up with things that we just accepted. And even though that's different, they're still not different in that they want to be seen, valued, acknowledged, heard. Perhaps I think they want to, more than we did, feel special. Like everybody wants to feel special,
Right.
but the Gen Zs really want to feel special. And in the challenges that most of us face, like attracting and retaining good staff, these are the things that we really do have to start paying attention to now. For example, if you advertise kindness as one of the values in your practice, you're more likely to attract Gen Zs that are quality. And it's something that hardly anybody talks about. But,
Interesting.
pay attention to it, because they're the things they're looking for. And the problem is that as the leaders in the organizations, as the doctors and practice managers, we all like roll our eyeballs because there's so much to do. And now we've got to hold your hand and make you feel special and blah, blah, blah. But we have to. And if you want to keep the good ones, but it can be woven into the culture of your organization. It takes a bit to get it established, but once it's established, it makes it much easier and a more joyful place for you to work as well.
Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I never knew that about the kindness.
Yeah.
Because would you have thought 20 years ago that you would have put an ad for a new employee and said kindness?
You know. And the other interesting thing is that all the, fancy wancy leadership journals now are talking about the so-called soft skills of leadership. So once upon a time it was EQ, emotional intelligence, and
Right.
now they're saying soft skills. But really, it's still emotional intelligence. But you got to throw in improved communication and more connection, and actually heart-to-heart connection. Because these days I'm speaking about what we are leading humans or interacting with humans. And we talk about B2B and B2C and all that sort of stuff. And so even if you're marketing to the referring dentists around you, those dentists are still humans and they still want to feel special and they still want to feel like they're important to you. So it doesn't really matter which level we're talking about. It's all about connecting with another human heart to heart and being sincere and authentic. And, there's all this research now on authenticity and vulnerability. And these are all the things that I'm talking about, but in a much more practical sense. For example, I spent 30, 32, 3, 4 years studying with a man called Michael Grinder, who's one of the world's leading, if not the leading authority on nonverbal communication. His brother co-founded NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is all about
Right.
communication.
What's his name? Michael Gruner?
Michael Grinder, or Grinder, some people say. And he'd be
Grin.
worthwhile, Grinder. He'd be worthwhile having on the show, actually, at some stage. He's amazing. His website's michaelgrinder.com.
Okay, I'll check it out.
And yeah. And one of the core things he taught me that I think has set me apart and is one of the reasons you remember what I talked about 20 years ago is that when you communicate, there's two core components. One is the content and one is the process by which you deliver the content.
Right.
So let's say you're a practice manager or you're a doctor and you've got to deliver a message to the team. But really, you've been stressed out of your brain. And the last thing you want to do is now stand up in front of the team and rally them on because you feel like crap yourself. And you force yourself to do it and you stand up. And every fiber in your being is emanating the nonverbal message of, oh, I don't want to be here. I can't believe I'm having to do this. Or just everybody listen to this so I can get on with the million other things that I have to do. So whatever you deliver won't hit the mark. You've got to take time to get yourself into a good state. I was just telling you before that AI is the most popular topic on the planet now. So I thought, okay, well, I'll join in. And I created a new keynote called The Real AI, which is awareness inside. And it is. I mean, AI, the technological AI, is never going to replace a human. It might replace a lot of the brain functions, but it'll never replace the heart functions. So we can have a mindset, and considering your mindset's really important, but the heart set is even more important because that's the tool that you're using to connect to others. And if we go back to the nonverbal stuff, the process versus content, the process is the magic that you wrap the content in that makes the content relevant and stick and have meaning for people.
But what you're describing as just for a quick break here is the difference between me, looking you lovingly in the eyes and saying, Amanda, I love you, versus Amanda, I love you.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like,
or this even, Amanda, I love you.
yeah. Where was it? Oh my gosh. Now I'm going to butcher this. I remember reading something not long ago about, I don't know if it was I love you, but the way you emphasize each word in the sentence changes the meaning dramatically. And I don't remember what it was, as opposed to like, I love you, as opposed to I love you and I love you.
Yeah.
Right? Like the way you emphasize each word changes the complete meaning of the sentence. And while you were talking about it, you unpacked, just for the record, I started with, hey, Amanda, give us 60 to 90 seconds about yourself. And I ended up with the Magna Carta of emotional intelligence. So there's so much you just spoke about that I want to unpack before it gets lost in the dust. one of the things that you were talking about really was the way you say it and what you say. I mean, it's just one of the many things you said that was just amazing. What happened? I mean, obviously, there's the old adage, fake it till you make it, right?
Which doesn't work, by the
Right,
way.
it doesn't. And that's what I was going to ask you. So I'm going to set up a scenario for you that's not that unusual, or as you might say, a scenario. I'm going to set up a scenario for you that's not uncommon in most ortho offices. Orthodontist wakes up, has 2 or 3 screaming children who they end up getting off to school or getting to the nanny or mom or dad or husband, wife, whoever is coming to take care of them. They bolt out of the house, lucky to be wearing the same pair of shoes, possibly with a stain on their scrubs from where their child spit up on them. They didn't sleep well last night, and now they're heading to work where they know they're going to be down at least one assistant because somebody stubbed their toe last night and now needs to be out for the next 8 weeks. Right? Particularly because it's Monday, and so someone's going to be out. They know they've got a tough day ahead of them. They show up at the office to find out that there are 3,700 emergency patients coming to be seen that day and no new patients on the schedule. So it's going to be a non-production day, just doing busy work. And their team is down, they're down. And we know that fake it till you make it doesn't work. What advice would you give that person who says, Glenn, forget the whole love in your heart, kindness thing. I'm hanging on by a thread here, brother. I barely got anything left in me. And my gas tank is empty. My emotional gas tank is empty. What advice do you give to these people? Because right now, listening, there are a huge number of people who are going, yes, that exactly. Thankfully, my kids are grown, so I don't ever have to worry about that part of it. But I've been there. And how do you navigate that, particularly when you're not just having to motivate yourself, but you've got to help inspire and love on others, not to mention the 50 to 100 patients you need to see that day.
Who are all going, ah.
Well, thankfully in orthodontics, not too bad, right? They're going like this.
Yeah, but they're still going,
Yeah.
and they got something stuck in here.
I can tell you're an anti-dentite. I can tell you don't like the dental office. But all things equal, what are you going to tell the person listening out there right now about how to get into that frame of mind?
Well, it starts a long time before then, really. However, today's a good day to start. And it starts with you and the awareness inside and recognizing that you're on the cliff about to leap into burnout if you're not already in burnout. So number one is recognizing where you are. And if you are in the covered with spit scrubs, driving to work thinking some expletive that I could say in Australia, but I can't say here.
Bugger off. I can say bugger. I can say bugger.
Well.
Can't say it in Australia.
Yeah, you can. Swearing your brains out, hurling abuse at people who are driving in front of you. It's time to stop and take about 312 deep breaths in and out and recognize that you do have control over yourself. It's not easy at times, but you do have the control. And the single easiest thing to do is twofold. One is to start breathing in and out, because as soon as you get stressed, the first thing that happens is your breathing becomes very shallow and very high, which means you're not getting oxygen, which isn't getting to the brain. And so now you are literally starting to get foggy in the head and you can't think. So first thing to do is to start breathing. Even if you breathe deeply all the way to work, you'll probably hyperventilate and get a bit dizzy, but try to keep driving.
Yeah. Better to be dizzy than angry is my motto.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing. And you're sitting, so you won't fall over. So the first thing is to breathe. The second thing is to become very present in the present moment, because in the present moment is everything that you need. Now, I would love to say to you and the people listening that I have mastered the art of being present. Yes, I just snap my fingers and suddenly I'm in presence and I'm just fabulous.
A fun fairy, some might say.
Well, sometimes I get the wand and I just hit myself on the head with it to see if that makes a difference.
And for those of you who don't realize, she used to have a beautiful wand. And it made a bring.
Yeah, it was pink and it lit up and it was
I bought one and I had it in the office for about a decade until it went belly up. Hey everybody, tickets for Summit 2025 are on sale now. Take a listen to what some of the attendees from Summit 2024 had to say.
This is one of the most unique, most impactful meetings that you can go to as an orthodontist.
It has everything compared to other meetings. Entertainment, the content in the meeting, the speakers, the food.
I learned a lot. It helps the practice, so it really kind of checks all the boxes.
You hope to get something out of it that is going to pay dividends for years to come.
Definitely return on your investment.
We take back a lot to our office.
You get information that you probably don't get easily at any other meeting.
Oh, well, I can't get any more either because China and, supply chains anyway. But they were wonderful things. But you can use anything that's a symbol. And perhaps you buy some stupid little bobble creature thing that you stick on the dashboard of the car that becomes your symbol of breathing and being present. So that you start to see the brain can't tell the difference between vividly imagined and reality. And it also creates joy spots, I call them. Okay. So if you consistently make the inside of your car a joy spot, so preferably you don't have the kids in the back screaming all the time and having fights, and I wouldn't be listening to the news. I don't think that's wise if you're driving to work and you're feeling stressed. If you've got to listen to anything, then put on some kind of calming music and have this bobblehead sticker, whatever you want, in the car that's your trigger to stop, to breathe. In fact, there was, I came up at one stage with SOS, and maybe it's useful here if I can remember how I labeled it. The stop, the first S is stop, just stop. And then the O is observe. Observe what's going on inside you right now. And then the third S is be still. So be still, be present. And in that present moment, be breathing. And as you start to calm down like that, because what tends to happen in that scenario you described, you're sitting in the car, you're thinking, God, look, I'm 10 minutes late. I don't know how I'm going to get here. Who's not going to be there? What patient's going to be coming in today? Just what drama is going to happen? You stir your state up. You put yourself into a really anxious physiological state. That's one of, instead of resilience, you're already defeated before you get there because your nervous system's on red alert. So the SOS and slow down, stop, get present is going to put you into a better state, which means whatever happens, you'll manage it better. And then instead of going through the day, like walking into the office, oh, Mary's not in today and Shirley's not in, and we have 84 emergencies and no new clients for a year. Instead of doing—
You went hard with that, a year. I went a day. I got no new patients for an entire year. Thanks for that.
Yeah, well,
there's no amount of SOS that's going to bring me home from that
help
one.
you from that one. Yeah. Well, I was exaggerating.
I know.
And that's not likely to happen. And if it is, you better have a really good look at your internal state. Because digressing just a bit from this, I was saying to Glenn, I moved back to America 2 years ago, and I turned 70 last year.
You make it look fabulous, Amanda.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Glenn. Up close, no. That's I'm not coming any closer to the camera. And, to move country and then move to a place where you knew no one except a couple, and then move again a year later to another place where you knew no one except the real estate agent is either remarkably stupid or could be seen as an opportunity for massive growth. And that's what I've done. But I was saying to Glenn too that since COVID, like all of you, the speaking world is transformed. It's just not the same as it was. And in the last 6 months or so, things have changed again in a very big way. So I recognized, and honestly, this is only about maybe in the last couple of weeks, I've kind of known it, but I haven't really slapped myself up the side of the head and said, stop it. You pay attention to this. I was letting myself slide into oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't have enough work. I'm not going to get the visa. I got a market for the first time in 38 years. And I'm trying to write articles to get them published in magazines so I can get a presence, and trying to up my social media and trying to do all these things that just a little one-person business has to do as well, let alone something you're trying to manage in your
Right.
businesses. And I've recognized that what I emanate out comes back. So I also studied quantum physics since I was at uni. So when I went to college, I was one of the first ever students to study quantum physics, and I've always been fascinated by it. And the truth in quantum physics, which we can prove, is that we are all connected all the time. Even though we feel disconnected, we're connected. And when you walk in the door at night and your what I call sparkly bits, but let's say your nonverbal antennae are going, something's wrong, something's not right here. And you say, what's wrong? And you hear someone say, nothing. It ties back to your comment earlier of how you say the word.
If I hear nothing, it means something.
Well, yeah, because you could hear, oh, nothing, and you'd be fine. But when you hear nothing, you think, oh, no, this is big.
Give me a second. I got to go run back to the car, go look at the bobblehead and take some breaths for a
Exactly.
minute.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't come in. Actually, there is one really good trick. I'm jumping all over the place, but you just reminded me of it. These are things I haven't spoken about for years. There's this fantastic technique that if you've had a dreadful day at work and you're stressed up the eyeballs, you either stop the car on the way home, not in a busy freeway, but in some relatively quiet spot, and take 10 minutes just for yourself. Because that's the only way you're going to get the time for yourself. If you've got to walk into a house and there are small children and daddy or mummy's home, it's like, whoa. And, you've got to be there for your kids. These are pivotal times when they're toddlers. So the only way you can do that is to be there for yourself. So you either take the 10 minutes out or you do this technique. I read about it in the Reader's Digest 1,000 years ago, where there was two houses and the neighbor used to watch his neighbor come home every night. And the guy would walk up to a tree near the front door and this neighbor would see the man like he was hanging things on the tree. And he watched this for months. And then one day he thought, I got to ask that bloke what he's doing. So he went outside when the fella came home and he said, look, I hope you don't mind me asking, what are you doing? And the guy said, oh, that's my trouble tree. And every night before I go in the door to be with my family, I hang all my troubles on the trouble tree. I take a big breath and I walk in the door trouble-free. And then when I come out in the morning, I can pick them all up and take them back with me. But he said the interesting thing is that a lot of the troubles have gone in the morning. And then the corollary to that is that when you get in the car, you have a little notebook that you keep in the glove box. And I think you call it the glove box here.
You do.
And you write all the things that are bothering you, all the things you've got to pay attention to, everything that you've got to remind yourself to do the next day. Make sure you got them all down there. Then you close the book, put it in the glove box, and you drive home. And you do something on the drive home that's a ritual that you do every day. Don't get on the phone and make 50,000 phone calls. And use the car as the opportunity to, send messages at red lights and stuff like that.
Right.
Use the time, and this is where the discipline comes in, to actually work on yourself.
Amanda, you hit so many, I know you said you were all over the place. You hit so many amazing things in that one little section that I have to stop you for a moment and just, first of all, when you said take 10 minutes for yourself on the side of the road, the challenge to people listening right now is what Amanda's saying is take 10 minutes for yourself and turn your phone off. Put it under the seat, put it in the trunk, put it somewhere. But, when we talk about 20 years ago, you and I were just talking 20 years ago, a little while ago, 20 years ago, I listened to, motivational Zig Ziglar or Wayne Dyer, or I listened to people on the way into work. I fed my brain pure nutrition.
Yeah.
Right. I made sure that on my way to the office, and I'm going back more than 20 years. I'm going back to 1996 when I purchased my first practice. What?
You must have been 7.
Yeah, I was 4 years old at the time. In 1996, when I bought my first practice, every single day to work, and it'll sound, there were no cell phones really to speak of. I mean, there were, but I put in, I had a CD series from Zig Ziglar and Wayne Dyer and a whole host of motivational speakers. What's his name?
Rohn.
I was about to say Jim Rohn.
He was awesome.
It was the best ever.
Oh, such a gentleman.
every single day going to work and every single day coming home from work, I had about a 25-minute drive. And all I listened to was this. And what I'm trying to get to people is just to underscore what you said earlier and to phrase it in a little different way. If I fed you Cheetos and Twinkies and Yodels and Ding Dongs and all the other stuff nonstop all day long, at some point your body would go, I'm done. I'm going to have high cholesterol. I'm going to have heart disease. My clothes aren't going to fit. I'm not going to sleep well. I won't be able to breathe well. It's going to be horrible. But people do this to their brain every single day. They listen to podcasts on true crime. God bless it. It's wonderful. But that's not motivating your brain to do anything special. They'll listen to podcasts or information on medicine, and that's great. But get yourself back to listening. There's some amazing podcasts that I listen to that are nothing but motivational talk. Positive talk. Your brain needs this nutrition if you're going to work. So if every ride is nothing but a phone call or catching up with a referring dentist or calling people nonstop or at a red light, as you said, sending messages at a red light, your brain is in no way, shape, or form getting the nutrition it needs. And if I took nothing else out of everything you said, and there's a lot to be taken, the one thing I would take out of this is, folks, if your life is miserable, if you're not feeling good, if you find you're stressed out, if you're over the edge, stop and look for a second at what you're feeding yourself mentally. Because I'm willing to bet that it's not prime grade A Wagyu beef that you're giving yourself or organic chicken. What you're feeding yourself is farm processed, ultra processed, horrible garbage food for your brain. And you get home and what do? You probably do more of it. And so, that was the first thing you said, Amanda, and I hope you agree.
Can I interrupt and expand on that for you for a
Please,
second?
I was about to ask you to.
Because it's not just your brain, it's your nervous system. And that's one of the key imbalances we have, because for most of us, our nervous systems are already on red alert. And you feeding your brain the junk is just amping up the red alert. And that's the thing that's causing the burnout and the illness and the stress responses. So remember, it's not just your brain, it's your entire nervous system. And that this 10 minutes, 25 minutes that you do, because your suggestion's awesome, don't be listening to the news. You'll shoot yourself before you get home. Listen to something inspiring, even if it's inspiring music. If you love music and there's music that makes you feel joyful, play that. But using this as your, it's attached here, you might as well just stick it on your body and it's sending direct messages to your nervous system going, fire up, fire up, fire up, panic, panic, panic. Get stressed now.
I know. Today when I was working, I needed to do some real heavy lifting mentally. There were some projects I really needed to be present for. And so I put on Spotify, I just put on, there's a I don't know what it is, a music list or a station, I don't know what you'd call it, of the 50 greatest pieces of classical music. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who just puts on classical music. Sometimes I like a good piece of jazz, some Coltrane, some Miles Davis, but I'm not the kind of guy who just comes downstairs or comes into my office and puts on, classical music. But I got to tell you, these are 50 pieces that every person listening has heard, right? They've heard, these are famous pieces, of classical music that you've heard 1,000 times. And your brain just thinks so much better. You feed it the right stuff. It's truly amazing.
Yeah. And those classical pieces actually are energetically good for you. There's frequencies embedded in those that actually harmonically calm your nervous system down. I think Bach is one of them who has, I forget what it's called now. It's something 3, I think. Anyway, there's a harmonic in it that literally calms your nervous system down. Oh, and I just remembered something else, Glenn. This is the best thing ever, and it's so simple. Do all those other things, but if you're in a state where nothing's working, but I would do this even if it is working because it's so effective. I went to a course called 12 Senses with a man called Dr. David Martin, and he talks about the 12 cranial nerves. And the trigeminal is the one that is attached to the mammalian dive reflex, meaning when Neanderthal-type humans fell in icy cold water, the mammalian dive reflex would kick in. It would instantly lower their heart rates and their entire metabolism and nervous systems so that they could survive longer before they had to get out of the water. So the short version of that that's so effective is to face plant in ice water. And, I learned this at the course last year and the year before, and I started doing a bit of it, but I didn't do much of it. And Valentine's Day came round and I found this plastic heart-shaped bowl for $1. And I thought, oh, they're good to buy. And I bought a few for people. And then I realized one day it's a perfect size, but it doesn't matter what kind of bowl it is, but it's a perfect size for your face.
Right.
So it doesn't take much water. You just get ice out of the refrigerator and it's got to be cold. And then you literally face plant. Put your face in up to here and try to count to 30 before you take your face out. Now, 30 seconds doesn't sound very long. It's so long when your face is planted in freezing cold water. However, it's a really pretty easy way to literally instantaneously calm yourself down. And I'm all for simple things that actually work. And truly, the next time you're feeling really you got to do something because you're about to explode, or even before that, before you get to that point, just face plant. And you'll do it once. All you need is a towel beside you. And, lots of doctors who don't wear makeup, that's even better because a lot of the women will be going, oh, I got to put my makeup on, and I got to face plant. No. Well, I don't know, do it before you go to bed or something. Or
Right.
Don't worry about your makeup because it's so effective as a stress buster.
Interesting. I never heard that before.
But it works totally physiologically. And at the course, it's usually in Boulder, Colorado, and you can have a look at it. It's on Fully Live, I think, 12 cent, fullylive.world. And we have big bowls, and there's snow everywhere because of February. And we watch everybody face plant, and then you measure your vital statistics. And it's extraordinary to see with most people how, first of all, how nervous they get about to do it, which is really interesting because you're just face planting and you got lots of people watching, but nobody's holding your head down in there.
That would be, we call that assault.
Yeah, that's right. Well, no, we're not doing that, but you're doing it under your own volition at home. However, you can actually see the heart rate going boop, 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 boop. And then the distance between the peaks gets longer and longer. And that's when the entire nervous system starts to really slow down.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You did mention something else also. As we wind down on time here, I wanted to cover one last piece because the workforce right now that's listening to this and who really make up the large bulk of orthodontics are millennials, right? Gen Xers are sort of phasing out of the workplace. Millennials are really taking over most of it, right? I'm talking about the body. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, but at 57 years of age, approaching 60, right? My era is starting to phase out, and I'm not an old Gen Xer. I'm a young Gen Xer, and so my question for you is this, because I've been telling all the millennials, and most of them have kids ages newborn or expecting to 12, 13, 14 years of age, 15 years of age, and they're in it. Like they're in it, and I really started looking at a lot of studies that were out there because I'm seeing all this burnout among my peers. I'm seeing all these people just really stressed out beyond imagination, living really good lives. I'm talking traveling the world, driving fancy cars. We know that good things and mental health don't necessarily go hand in hand, but nonetheless, they're living blessed lives, working 3 or 4 day work weeks, making, 7 figures, just wanting for very little, yet so stressed out in a space where we don't have to be outside climbing a telephone pole in 100-degree weather. We're not outside digging ditches in freezing cold weather. And, I started looking at statistics, and statistics would say that this generation is spending more time with their children than any generation before ever in the history of mankind.
Wow.
Has never seen parents spend as much time with their children. And the statistic that really, really blew me away was that the overwhelming majority of this generation, when polled, claim they're not spending enough time with their kids.
Wow.
And so they seem to be living, for whatever reason, for their children in a way that no generation has ever lived for their children. So when I say to them, hey, I'm gonna use the original AI, right, artificial intelligence, to help you get back 4, 5, 6 weeks of your life, what would you do with all that spare time? The first answer they say reflexively is spend it with my kids. And I'm like, time out. You already wake up and spend it with your kids. You already come home and spend it with your kids. You need to put on your oxygen mask before you can put on someone else's. And I feel, and the statistics would bear this out, that this generation of orthodontists and professionals is spending way, way, way too little time on themselves and way too much time on their children, because when they get on social media, they see this idealized version of how everybody's kids are, and they feel, I have to catch up. I'm not a good enough parent if I'm not doing this. And as a result, they've been sold a bill of goods to where it's okay to turn off and go, you know what, kids? Every day, you guys go in the backyard and go play. Mommy and daddy aren't playing with you. Mommy and daddy are going to have a drink. Mommy and daddy are going to sit down and read a book. Mommy and daddy are going to go in the bedroom. Mommy and daddy are not here to take care of you 5, 7, 9, 12-year-olds nonstop. And I just want to get your take on this, because I think that this is a massive, massive problem for that generation, where it's okay to not be with your kids for a significant amount of time. Or am I just a terrible parent and I did so wrong by my 3 grown kids?
Who are now all in mental institutions, obviously.
Oh, my 3 kids are, they they're going to get locked up. They're such cretins. No, I mean, look, you turned out well. I'd say I turned out okay. My kids turned out okay. And if I said to you, how much time did your parents spend with you?
Not a lot.
My parents didn't ever see my college, ever.
Wow.
Ever. My parents never saw I skipped graduation. They never saw my college. And you know what? I've got people who are traveling the world with their kids' lacrosse or soccer team, and they're spending every waking moment with it. I'm sitting here going, folks, take a breath, plunge your face in some ice water, metaphorically speaking, and focus on yourselves.
Literally.
And right now, there are people hearing this message who are, I'm going to use the Amanda Gore voice. How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you talk to us this way, Glenn? But they don't realize that if they just spent more time on themselves, a lot of the problems they're facing would go away.
Well, go back to the nonverbal stuff, Glenn, that I was talking about before, and the quantum physics stuff. Because who you are, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, who you are shouts so loudly, I can't hear what you say. So whatever state you are in, you are energetically at a frequency level literally affecting your children. They pick up everything. They know when you're stressed, no matter what your face says, whatever your voice says. Well, I can't even say that because it's the voice tone that matters. So micro muscle, micro color changes in your face indicate how you're feeling. And, I've been studying a man called Paul Selig lately. And in his teachings, he talks about any decision made in fear will come back to bite you on the ass. And so I think what you're saying is exactly right. Put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because, the people listening probably haven't seen me do this. Why on a plane, if you're with a child, do they tell you to put the oxygen mask on first? Because if you're dead, the kid is sitting there going, Mom, Dad, you're useless to the child. So pushing yourself to the extreme to spend more time with your children that you might think is a good thing to do is actually not, because you're undermining their capacity to learn independence, to learn how to play by themselves, to learn all the lessons of resilience that they're going to have to learn to be functioning adults. And you deprive them in many ways of most things. And the other thing that struck me when you first started speaking was that here are these people with fancy houses, big cars, going overseas a lot. Do you need all that? And is it all paid for, or is it all mortgaged? Because if you've put yourself into a position where you've got a big fancy house and fancy cars and, I don't know, all the accoutrements that we think are going to make us happy, with a massive mortgage over your head, work becomes more pressure, everything becomes more pressure. And then that spins off into you're the central component in your life. And if at this central core, there's a peaceful energy, that peaceful energy radiates out and affects and influences everything, even throughout your community. But when it's a stressed, high-pressured, I've got to do all of this stuff and I've just got to keep going, it's the stories you're telling yourself. And like you said, looking on social media, which is like evil, I think, and comparison. Again, AI, awareness inside. Are you comparing yourself with others? And then doing things from a basis of fear. And when you think things and you make decisions from your head, inevitably there's fear attached to it. When you make a decision from the wisdom of your heart, there's a knowing in it. Like I knew I had to come back to America 2 years ago. I didn't want to come. It wasn't something that I woke up one morning and said, "Whoa, I'd love to live in America again." I'm very grateful for the opportunity, but it wasn't something that I consciously wanted and thought about doing. I just knew it. So pay attention to as you're listening to this podcast and you're listening to other things Glenn says at other times, pay attention to what you know is true because it'll resonate with you. And if it's resonating with you that you are doing all of this stuff and being this for your children, spending more time with your children because you feel guilty because you're not spending time with your children, it's not good quality time, much as that's a hackneyed phrase. And if it's out of fear, it will never pay off in the long run. Now, it's part of life's journey and it's what you're learning. But if you want to fast track the process or get a hack, then start to notice how many decisions you make out of fear and how many you make out of the wisdom of your heart where you know what to do.
It's beautiful. And I'm going to add to that. And I said this on one of my podcasts ages ago. How many of the things you're doing, and this is really hard. This is really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
How many of the things you're doing are doing because you can't wait to post it on social media? And how many of the things you're doing, if there was no social media around, if social media didn't exist, would you still be doing what you're about to do? And I'll be the first to admit, I've been caught in that trap. Well, I can't wait to do this thing, the pictures I'm going to get and the post I'm going to make. But that's a lot of what's going on with kids today, right? I don't need to know that your kid had cereal for breakfast and then you made eggs. Oh, and by the way, now they're watching television, right? That's a great post. And then we're gonna go to the ice cream store together. I mean, like, come on, take your kid to the ice cream store and put your phone in your back pocket and forget about it. Leave it in the car.
Live. Don't just live through social media or live through social media. Actually live. Be present with your kid. How many times do you see people, and I have to say I've been guilty of this, but mine stems from sometimes I take photos of when I'm in a group, not to post on social media, but just to have photos. But I use it as an excuse to not necessarily have to engage. And how many times do we do that too? And if social media and doing stuff for social media is really driving you, then honestly, beat your head against a big brick wall till you bleed, because
or stick your face in some ice water
and stay there for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
because that is just.
But it's an addiction.
Yeah.
It's a dopamine hit that unfortunately people don't realize they're getting. And again, people think, oh, Glenn, you live on social media. What people don't realize is I connect on social media by messaging people. I message back and forth like a letter. I have a chance to chat with people. But newsflash to everybody out there, when I came to your party and said, oh, I didn't know that you'd been sick because you'd only posted on social media. I don't follow anything or anybody on social media. I post for Orthopreneurs. I help my Orthopreneurs RD group. I message people directly, and that's it. I'm done. I'll post some fun stories every now and then, but nothing significant. But Amanda, I could do this all day with you because you're such a joy and you're so full of such great energy. You fill my cup. And
vice versa, Glenn.
And again, I'm going to go back and say to everybody here, what you're hearing today is a lot of stream of consciousness stuff from both of us, just because we're trying to tackle in 45 minutes or 50 minutes, something that really you could spend 3 days in a workshop working on.
Yeah.
And I've seen Amanda talk on these things in very cogent, well-designed presentations that'll have you mesmerized and remembering it 20 years later, like I do. And so, Amanda, if someone wants to get in contact with you, to have you work with them in some way, shape, or form, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, 2 ways. You can go to amandagore.com or email me, amanda@amandagore.com. And if you want some YouTube stuff, I've got lots of free stuff on my channel. It's Amanda Gore TV. And I have the social media platformy things as well, but I don't do it.
Huh.
I have someone who does the social media for me. I feed her the content, but she does it.
Okay.
because I can't. I'm the generation that didn't ever have it, so I don't want to see that you had an iced coffee for breakfast. Really,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
don't blame. You know what? What am I feeding my brain? And I go out of my way to make sure that what goes in here needs to be grade A, because my life is way too complicated for me living on mental Cheetos and all the other garbage. And so,
And remember, Glenn, remember the heart. You talk a lot about the head. It's really
I know
important. So's the heart. What are you feeding your
that's my
heart?
blind spot. That is my blind spot. I've got a big heart, but I need to slow down and bring it into the equation all more often in terms of
And
how
give
my
it to
thoughts are.
yourself too.
Exactly.
And ease up on yourself a bit too,
Oh,
perhaps.
I've learned to give myself a lot of grace. Sometimes a little too much. But
Oh, well, we swing.
you swing.
Got to go from
Exactly.
one end to the other, and you'll come back
Exactly.
to balance.
People are hard on themselves. But I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today. Who knows when we'll see you next? Hopefully, maybe at a summit soon would be great.
That would be wonderful.
And so appreciate you, Amanda, and just wishing you an amazing 2025.
And you, Glenn. Thank you so much. This was such fun.